if you look at research in the Western context, there is a great deal of difference in applied research, scientific research, and research in humanities. And we belong to humanities. And usually, the research that is carried out in the field of humanities and social sciences are not considered to be on par with the research in the scientific fraternity. That is why people in the language fraternity, especially the TESOL, the ESL, and the EFL context, they also started embracing scientific methods of research because they wanted to show people and not to tell people. So I hope you can understand the implications of what I tell you. See, the social sciences fraternity wanted to conduct really scientific research just like the science community. So they actually wanted to show people what they do through strong empirical evidence, to tell them, okay, here are the results for you to see. Here is what happened. This is what happened. So this kind of method is called as a scientific research method. A scientific research method is not interpreting data. Of course, there is a lot of interpretation involved in that, but it all boils down to showing data empirically. So that is what scientific method is. Science, especially if you look at the insight into the domains of science, let me give you an example. Let us take medical research for the matter. Medical research, an invention of new drug. Okay, drug A, drug B. Which drug is effective? If you write articles about after giving the drug to people, interviewing people, giving a questionnaire to people about the effect of these drugs, science community do not embrace such ideologies because they believe that the data is quite subjective. So there is a method to actually objectify the data. There is a method to use the scientific term to actually dissect and see what is inside. This is what is inside. So is it possible to conduct those kind of research in language teaching? Perhaps these kind of designs are called as intervention designs. So that is what I'm going to discuss with you today. But for a change, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one of your topics today. Let's say there are 4 applied topics, and I will use those topics to substantiate my point so that I'll just get the message across very clearly based on who volunteers. Probably if you just tell me your concept, I will apply your concept just as a scientific researcher would do. I mean, so this is the fundamental premise fundamental premise of experimental research, also called as intervention research or empirical designs or whatever. So I don't know if it's possible to apply this kind of advanced strategies in the context of literature, but it is possible if you are trying to do a kind of a comparative analysis, or it basically boils down to methods. So whatever I tell you right now could be vague, but as we move on, I'll throw more light on every aspect of empirical research. So let me take you through the samples. So let us take the first sample today. Let us take a particular researcher sample, and we will I think whoever contributes your topic, I'll give you an overview, apply that design, and show you in the context of your research. Am I clear and audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So let me now share my slides and take you on a journey of your area, not my area. I'll take you on a journey of your area. But before I do that, let me first set the grounding. When I say set the grounding, there are some basic terminologies you need to be familiar with. See, some key terms you need to be familiar with, some basic concepts that you need to gather some kind of grounding. So let me explain those concepts to you and then take your views and apply your studies. So this is the plan for the day. So let me present my screen. So we were discussing about different kinds of research methodologies, and we have now moving on to a specific experimental methodology, what we call as intervention research. So it fundamentally answers, your method section fundamentally answers these three questions. What techniques have you used to collect the data necessary to answer your research questions? Probably we already discussed about these techniques like interviews or questionnaires and then observation. So why are those techniques relevant to your study? So we are going to reflect on this today. And importantly, most importantly, how are you going to employ them and how have you employed them? So one important point is today that there is no dearth of knowledge. Whatever method you want, if you just go and Google it, it's nobody can claim ownership for any knowledge. So anybody can go and find whatever they want to, but it all boils down to using your discretion to see what is applicable in your context, know the application strategies. So that is why we have this discussion. But as far as knowledge is concerned, if you go and type in these keywords, you're just going to get a lot of stuff. So when we talk about intervention research, there are three kinds of intervention research. One is non-experimental, another one is quasi-experimental, and the third type is actually experimental. Okay, and non-experimental is measuring the outcomes before and after a particular program. Suppose you have a particular program. What are the outcomes before you started? And after you taught, what are the outcomes? If you make this kind of observation, this is called as causal comparative design. There are no comparison groups. It's only before and after. There is a second design called the quasi-experimental design, where you will measure the outcomes for program participants and non-participants. What I mean is you will take one group, you will have before and after studies, and the third one is called as the pure experimental research. So this is just a rough and a vague notion of what experimental research is. Now let me show you this flow chart, and then I would suggest you to type in your particular topic which you have done earlier, and we will prepare this flow chart for your study. First of all, every researcher will have an hypothesis or they will have a research question. So regardless of the design you choose, your research starts with a research question. Actually, it doesn't start with a question per se, it starts with a problem. So regardless of the design, say it ethnographic or broadly speaking qualitative or quantitative, or survey research or action research which we dealt with earlier, regardless of the design you choose, it all starts with a problem. It could be a theoretical problem, just as it happens in the context of literature research, or it could be an applied problem which happens in the context of ELT, or it could be a blend of both. So it starts with your hypothesis or research questions. Okay, for example, what is a hypothesis? Let's say, can I have a volunteer to tell me your topic, because it will not be fair for me to give you a generic. If I pivot my discussions in a kind of a generic aspect, I don't think we'll take much out of it. But if you can tell me what your topic is, we will use your topic for these intervention studies, especially in ELT. Can I have a volunteer to tell me you will apply this concept? Just your topic will do, or your topic or your research questions. Just topic will do. Even if you don't have a research question, it's okay.
So developing speaking skills.
Okay.
For tertiary level students.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So especially students from Tamil medium background.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, developing speaking skills at tertiary level for Tamil medium students. Let us take this topic and let us see to what extent we can apply this topic using a pure scientific design, which we call as intervention research or an empirical research or quantitative research. Call it whatever, but a highly effective study in the scientific context. Let me now show you how we are going to apply this topic. So the researcher Ms. Charles is working on developing speaking skills for the Tamil medium learners. So he is developing an hypothesis. So let's say his hypothesis is speaking skills are already taught conventionally in the classrooms. Now, what is that conventional approach? How is it taught? Based on his observation, he will document. This is how speaking is usually taught in the classroom. Usually. That could be based on his previous studies or his classroom observation or whatever, which he calls as method A. Okay. Now, Mr. Charles has developed an more effective method which could be based on some fundamental premises of certain theories, a combination of many theories, and he could have developed a new strategy for teaching Tamil medium learners, which he calls as method B. So he has an hypothesis, and his hypothesis is the method that the researcher has proposed for speaking is far more effective than the existing approaches to speaking. So this is the context. So for example, in science, there are a lot of drugs, but this new drug is far more effective for treating COVID than the other drugs which are actually existing. Am I making myself clear to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much, sir.
Yes. So we all start with a clear hypo. This is what is called as hypothesis. And hypothesis is you have now method A, which is already there, and you have method B. Now you are going to do intervention research or scientific research or an experiment. Now if you add certain chemical, this is going to be the reaction. Experiment, show it. Don't tell people, don't interpret, show. Let your figures speak for themselves, let your statistics speak for themselves, let your numbers speak for themselves. And this is what the scientific community says. Don't tell but show. That is how this kind of design came into origin. So now Mr. Charles has a very clear hypo. Now second step, now he needs to have two set of students. He needs to have two set of students. One set of student, he has to expose them to the conventional approach, and to another set of students, he has to expose them to the new approach. Okay, to the new approach. Then measure the efficacy of his the new method. He has to measure the efficacy of his new method. Then he will frame his own modules. Those things are different. We are discussing only about the methodology. So he has two groups. Now, there are two terms that every researcher who is working on intervention should be familiar with. Those two terms are called as independent variables and dependent variables, because they will naturally, any researcher working on an experimental design should know what is an independent variable and what is a dependent variable. Here, for Mr. Charles, the independent variable is the new method that he has developed. Okay, is the new method that he has developed. This is called as the independent variable, whereas the dependent variable is the outcome of the study. Was the study successful or was it not successful? And how do you measure success? The success could be measured by students' performance, by their marks, which are quantitative, by using certain advanced statistical tools, so by questionnaires. So these are certain methods. So Mr. Charles has a clear independent variable, which is his new teaching method, and he has also a dependent variable, which is an assumption that this is going to be my outcome when I conduct this experiment. Now, the problem that most of the researchers have is they already have a preconceived notion that the new method will work, and it is absolutely okay after conducting the experiment to find and understand this method has not worked, but the previous methods are much better than this. Probably yours was has not yielded the desired impact, but so it's an unsuccessful. Such people usually don't report that way, but I'm telling you. So the researcher should go with this kind of transparency into research. You should have that kind of transparency. So you should not go with preconceived opinion. So Mr. Charles now has an independent variable, which is his new method, and he also has a dependent variable, which is actually the outcomes. Am I making myself clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Step 3. Step 3. Now, Ms. Charles has two groups of students. One students are called as the control group, who are taught using the conventional method. Okay. So, and here he has an experimental group where he has instructed them using the new method. So new method is experimental and the old method is the conventional method. You can call it as method A and method B for easy convenience. So he has conducted the experiment. After conducting the experiments, he collected the scores for the experimental group, and then he collected the scores for the control group and assessed the grade based on certain rubrics. So he assessed their numbers, their mean, their standard deviation, the quantum of improvement. Then he will use advanced statistics to find out if his new approach has worked or not. So this is a rough outline of experimental research design, or we call it as intervention research. But this intervention research has many permutations and combinations. Certain combinations are supposed to be weak and certain combinations are supposed to be strong. So we have had a generic example uh, of applying experimental. Now, in the remaining part of my talk, I'll give you more intense and more calibrated and specific examples to still drive home the point. So let's move on to certain key terms that you need to understand. Whenever you conduct an experimental research or an intervention research, the first thing you need to remember is you have to think about reliability in your studies. Let me define what reliability is. because you need to be very familiar with certain terms in the field. So let me discuss reliability, and let me actually discuss validity. So first, let's move on to reliability. So reliability refers to, suppose Charles has conducted this experiment. It has worked for him. The same experiment, let's say I am conducting it in my classroom context. Now, I am not able to repeat that experiment because the steps are not very clear on what he did to me. Then the study is not reliable. Okay, it has worked for him, but it has not worked for me. That there could be many factors for that. Could be because the students in his context may be different from my context. The materials that he used may be different. The materials that I used may be different. The technology that he has used is different. The technology that I used is different. But it is okay. But it should clearly tell me what are the steps from A to Z that the researcher did. Clearly, what are the principles? What is the lesson plan? What is the procedure? What is step A? What is step B? It's as simple as you add chemical A, B, and C. This is the reaction. You add a different chemical A, B, and C. This is the reaction. And researcher A, if he is using 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 grams of the three chemicals and gets the reaction, whether it is researcher A, B, C, or D, he should get the same reaction. If he gets the same reaction, then it is called as reliable. So, in simple, common layman terms, reliability is, in the context of ELT research, whatever Mr. Charles has done, I should be able to replicate it, the entire procedure. And if I can do that, then his study is called as the validity in study. So, sorry, reliability in the study. So the idea behind reliability is that it should be repeatable by other researchers. So this is one term. Validity encompasses the entire experimental concept. Now, to simplify this complex concept, usually they do this in psychological assessment and educational research. Reliability refers to results are consistent. Now, let me give you another example. Let me not use the example which I gave earlier. For example, Ms. Charles has conducted the experiment with a group of students, have found that he has got a certain result. Now, Ms. Charles is going and doing the same thing with another group of learners. And does he get a different result? Then the study is not reliable. If he get more or less similar results, the score cannot be 40 and 40, but it has to be significant, right? Do you get my point? So if Charles goes and conducts the same experiment with a different batch of students, then it is reliable, which means that any researcher who is working on an experimental design should not be happy with one particular sample. You should retest it in 2 or 3 contexts, which is considered. And in fact, believe me, whenever you write papers on experimental research, the chances of publication are quite high, because this is considered to be quite a scientific approach. So I don't mean to say that the chances of questionnaire and interviews are less, but in the context of ELT research, but in the context of literature research, there is always a value for interviews. So that's what reliability is. Validity refers to your results should be in alignment with your research questions, with your research objectives. If your research objective was to check the phonology, and if your results have checked the fluency, then it is not valid. Do you get my point? If your research objective was to check the enunciation, the improvement in enunciation, and in your results, if you are talking about fluency, then your results are not valid. So an applied researcher should ensure that there are two aspects of his research. One is reliability and the other one is validity. So I believe that I have just given you a bird's eye view of what is experimental research. In the remaining part of the presentation, I am going to take you to a few more applied studies based on others' context, other researchers' context. But before I do that, I'll give you more examples. How can you make your experimental research more valid, more authentic, more reliable? The first thing is called as randomization of samples. Now let us say that Mr. Charles is choosing a weaker group for conventional method and students a little bit better group for his new method. This is kind of flawed design, which means his sample is very purposefully he has chosen samples which is not randomized. Randomization, because you have to pick people at random, okay, at random without any bias. We call this as research bias in scientific terminology. So there should be no bias. Secondly, there should be an dependent and independent variable which we discussed earlier, okay. And then there is another important terminology called as matching based on the age. For example, the mean of group A cannot be 18.5 and the mean age of group B cannot be 19. So there is a 0.5 difference in age group. So naturally students with the higher age group will have the higher level of cognition. So there is no matching. The design is flawed. So there is no counterbalancing. So you should ensure that there is a homogeneity, that both the groups are very similar in terms of cognition, in terms of performance, in terms of caliber. But how do we do that? We will discuss that in the remaining part of the talk. So how do we do that? Let's just go and discuss this. So earlier, in my earlier slide, I was giving you a very generic example of how to apply this uh, design, an intervention design. But this intervention design is have many classifications. The first type is called as pre-test, post-test only design. So now I will take the topic of another researcher and apply this and show you. And then I will apply true experimental design and show you. Then I will apply randomized uh, design and show you. And then I will apply Solomon 4-group design and show you. You yourself decide which one is more authentic to your study. So it has, as I said, the objective is to convince you that it is possible to do medical research or research with precision, with authenticity, with reliability, with validity, and with empirical findings, even in social sciences research. So this is where I am actually leading you. So now let's have one more topic. So Mr. Charles has given the context for the first discussion of generic discussion of what uh, an experimental research is. I'm sure that you have got an idea, and I'm sure that I have used certain terminologies like randomization, like the independent variable. So I'm sure that you understood these concepts. Even if you don't understand, I'm sure in the rest of the talk I'll give you more examples, because I believe it is only through examples and application that we can move from confusion to clarity. Because as I said, there's so much of knowledge today. Anybody can go and tap any knowledge that we want, but unless you think about or you reflect about how you can apply it in the context of your research, You will not move from confusion to clarity. So in order to be clear, you should reflect, you should mull over these aspects and how you can apply. I'm very sorry, it's very difficult for some fields to apply, but you can really think. I mean, listening is no harm. I'm talking especially to Benazir and Jeremy. I don't know how you can practically use such strategies, but this was in the syllabus, and I'm just discussing it. But perhaps you can think about certain strategies from this study and see if you can use these approaches, because that's novelty, to take unknown approaches and see if it's possible to apply it in the context of your research. And that's what novelty is. All right, may I have another volunteer to give me an example? Let us use your, I mean, two ways is beneficial for you. One, you will get more clarity on your area. That is why I don't believe in coming out with preconceived notions on what examples to give. All my talks I want to pivot to your context. So can I have another volunteer to give me your topic, so we will apply another design. Yeah.
So shall I?
Yeah, please, yes.
So my topic is to understand the impact of online instruction strategy for the development of writing skills at tertiary level.
Okay, thank you, Line. Okay. So, yeah, apparently both Ms. Charles and Mrs. Line are working on tertiary level. The context is different. Let me apply and show you another design in the context of Line's uh, research. So, she was talking about using online instruction to teach writing at tertiary level. Let's say that she's applying pre-test and post-test only design, which means she will have, just like the earlier method, she will have a control group and she will have an experimental group. Okay, she'll have a control group and she'll have an experimental group. For the control group, she will give a pre-test, and for the experimental group also she will give a pre-test, and this is before the experiment. She will collect both the scores and see if they are similar. Similarity in terms of what? In terms of performance. If it is writing, in terms of writing skills. Again, she may have certain variables in writing. What to test in writing? Maybe she may test cohesion and coherence. She may test vocabulary. She may test grammatical accuracy in writing. So all the parameters more or less similar. Let us see that the experimental group scores an average of 6 out of 10, and a control group scores say about 4 out of 10. Then she has to totally change the samples, because the sample in the initial stage itself there is a mismatch. So more or less she can't expect 7 7. More or less it should be very similar, and for that there are certain protocols and procedures to achieve homogeneity, or they use the term parity. So that is called parity in research. So now Lion has chosen the same age group, have chosen the same cognition, the same branch. One branch civil engineering, another branch is say computer science engineering. Naturally the cutoff is different for the students. So when she uses the same demographic variable, same group with the same students who have more or less the same cutoff, with the same set of performance before your experiment, then you have achieved homogeneity. So Lion has checked. She has an online instruction for one group. She has kind of a traditional instruction for control group. Now she has checked the homogeneity in both the groups. Now she has designed her own experiment. In her new method, she clearly documents the data collection procedures. The data collection procedures, the principles will be based on her theory. Like it's like a step A, what did she do? Step B, step 3, step 4, step 5. How did she plan her, for example, lesson plan, right from the entry of the class till the completion of the module, or it could be a new training material, or it could be a new lesson plan, or it could be a new teaching methodology. So what did she do? That is an experimental treatment. To another group, there is no treatment at all. After that, she is giving a post test to both the groups, and now Lion is assessing the post test scores. But here she will make two comparisons. One, she will look at the comparison between these two tests, two pre-tests, which should be similar, and then she will look at the difference between the two post-tests, which should be different. Okay, so you get the point. So in the experimental group, if she has got a statistical improvement in scores compared to the control group, then her new method has worked. If not, her new method has not worked. So this is called as a pure experimental design. So we call as the pre-test and the post-test only design. Okay, the pre-test and the post-test only design. So to give you more clarity, let us say in this experimental design, she has a sample size of 51 students for her study. She goes to a class and she takes 51 students for her study. Okay, so she classifies them into control and experimental group, and look at the numbers here. This is very important. You can't have 40 in one group and 20 in another group. You will not get proper statistics. So she has 27 in both the groups, and then she conducts pre-test for both the groups, and then she ensures that there is homogeneity in the pre-test. After the pre-test, she uses in an experimental group a new method called the 5E learning cycle. I think in the context of Lion's research, it could be the TPAC model which is working on, the which is a theoretical premise. So she's applying that theoretical premise to her study. So this is the intervention. This is the intervention, new method. She is not using any method for the control group. After that, she is conducting post test for both the groups, and she has got her results. So this, how to interpret the results, is a different proposition altogether. There are research protocols and there are steps involved in it, but the objective of my lectures is only to help the researchers to throw
Excuse me,
light
sir.
on qualitative and quantitative designs. And
Excuse me,
since it
sir.
is not, yes, sir.
Sir, can I just raise a doubt, sir?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Sorry, sir. Sir, it's very clear, what is the interventional approach.
Yeah.
And when we come to conventional approach,
Yeah.
now, what sort of, could you just give an example, sir? Do we use the same old method that is practiced in schools and colleges? Or I do not really, I'm not able to fully understand what is conventional approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, sir. See, the word conventional, every researcher, when they use the word conventional, they should properly write a rationale of what constitutes conventional approach. And that is not a subjective observation in experimental research. To throw more light on what you asked, let's see Mr. Charles goes to many classes and sees the method that has been followed already, the existing approaches that the teachers follow.
All right.
Based on his observations, let's see that you document that these are the approaches which are followed, and you write a strong rationale that these are the approaches. I am not convinced with these approaches, and you define what is conventional based on your observation. And your observation could be direct, or your observation could be based on previous studies, or your observation could be based on previous literature. Am I clear, sir?
Yeah, very clear, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So the term conventionalism, when you refer, the most important thing in research is there should be no ambiguity in your articulation. I mean, any research for the matter, a layman, when they come and read your work, there should be no ambiguity. So no ambiguity, not in terms of phrases, not in terms of sentences, even in choosing the words. When you articulate a word, that's the most precise word in your context. So that's scientific writing. Scientific writing is measurable. Words are measurable. You can't use any word, you have to use the specific word. By the way, that's a very good question to take this discussion further. So moving on. So this is how it is, so ultimately she maybe I don't know if she achieves the desired outcomes or she doesn't achieve the desired outcomes. It all boils down to how what she finds out and how she argues. So that's how people conduct true experimental design. But of course, in this particular course itself, in this course work itself, you have the last chapter, I believe. I don't know. I mean, one more professor will be handling to you about the strategies of analyzing these experimental analysis or action research or theoretical research or interpretive analysis or literature research, whatever research we discussed earlier. You have in the last module on analysis, data analysis. So at the time you'll be more clear, but it is not in the scope of my lecture to discuss with you, because I'll be digressing from it. I'll unconsciously touch upon what the other professor intends to do. So wantedly and purposefully, I'm not touching upon those aspects of how we will use this analysis and interpret. So that's not my scope. All right. So I have discussed it in the context of Lyons research, and I'm just giving you one more example. There is also called as randomized post-test design. You can do any design. Randomized post-test design, which means, see, you had a control group and an experimental group. Let us say that these things are not feasible. You have only one group. This is called as quasi-experimental research. You need not have a control group. You need not have the experimental group. In the same group, you can do it. This is called as quasi-experimental research. I'll give you a very simple example. Let us take two patients. Okay, this is a true experimental research. Patient A, patient B. The present headache tablet that is in the market, let's say, A. I don't want to use any uh, uh, name, because people should not sue me because these things are very, very important when we give lectures. Because when you use any particular brand and when it goes online, people will sue you. So let us say that A is a tablet, a headache tablet. Two persons are taking the tablet. Okay. And how much time it takes for them to get the relief? You measure that using a scientific parameter. Okay. Then you give a new drug to them. And what is the effect of the new drug? Is there improvement? If you justify there is improvement, then you are taking the knowledge a little further in your area. True experimental. Quasi-experimental, same person before and after. Same person. You go to a particular class, teach them, observe them, conduct a diagnostic test. After a period of time, use your entire methodology. With the same group, you assess them. You don't have a control group, you don't have an experimental group. It's the same group. You need not have homogenization. You need not have random sampling. This is called as a single group pre-test post-test design. So you can do that single group pre-test post-test design. So if you do that, this is called as quasi-experimental research design. A quasi-experimental research design. So earlier slide I was discussing about true experimental. I'm giving you an example because if you have a lot of limitations or no time, or if you feel that it is a very cumbersome and complex process, you can just do a quasi-experimental, same group before and after. So again, another scientific experiment, we call this as placebo. We call it conventional in the social sciences context, but in the medical context they call it as placebo. Placebo is drug A, your drug. Placebo drug means it's a vitamin tablet. It's not a headache tablet. Take a particular patient, two patients, give them vitamin tablets. Tell them you have given them headache tablets. See if they have any improvement, and then give you a tablet. Whatever you have given earlier is a placebo. It's null. So these are some of the terms: true experimental, quasi experimental. Then we will move on to, this is considered to be the gold standard, because certain research designs are considered to be better than the other research designs in terms of scientific research. For example, in scientific research, people think a pure experimental design with randomization, with homogenization, with parity, with a control group and experimental group is considered to be more authentic, valid, and reliable than a quasi experimental. But however, there are hundreds of theses, even in foreign countries. If you just go to ProQuest and Google, there are hundreds of studies, even in quasi experimental research. The researcher will acknowledge the limitations, but it is perfectly okay to choose any design. So the objective of the series of lectures that we have been having in the last few weeks is to help you to choose your own design, but not to argue which one is better than the other. And what is better than the other depends on your context, depends on your domain, depends on your topic. And today, probably for an literature researcher, the talk that I'm giving today may not fit into the context of their study. So this cannot be an appropriate design for them. Only interviews could be appropriate design. Theory could be an appropriate design. In fact, a literature researcher need not have a design at all. They can just use a theoretical premise and do a deconstructive or interpretive analysis. All right. So having said that, let me move on to another gold standard of experimental research. Maybe another volunteer. Let us apply the Solomon 4 group design. So, but so far, whatever, am I making sense? Because whatever I'm telling you, this area on methods for a new researcher, it will usually bamboozle them. There are so many concepts. Unless you go read, rethink, apply it in the context of your study, only then you will get clarity and you can come back to me. The purpose of this particular course on methods is only to give you a bird's eye view. That is why I am not getting very deeper into concepts. So as I said, today there is explosion of knowledge. Maybe you can just go and Google it yourself. But my purpose is to show you not only that these are the methods which are available, but these are the methods which are suitable for your study. So by the end of my talks, if you are convinced, okay, this method will be suitable for my study, then I have achieved my objective. Or if it's just a mere talk which you are going to prepare for the examination, definitely Google will achieve that objective, right? So, I mean, anybody can Google and find out what I say. So my objective is not that. So I hope I'm making myself clear. So I want another context now to apply Solomon 4 group design. So I thank Charles and Lyon for giving me two contexts. Now I'm just going to discuss gold standard in experimental approach, and maybe another context. I will exactly use your context for the research design. Please. Just the topic. Either Sharanya Suguna ma'am. Just your topic will do. I'll take it from there.
So my topic is similar to Charles's, but
Yeah.
my the level of I mean, is like a school level, like primary level.
Okay,
Like
okay,
more or like
yeah.
concept is same. So
Okay,
I thought, okay, yeah.
okay, okay, that's okay. So the concept is same. You're also working on speaking skills. Am I right, Mrs. Sharanya?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So you're also working on speaking skills. Yeah. On speaking, what are you working on? Maybe. Okay. Let's take speaking for that matter. But you are using a theoretical premise of task-based approach. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll use slightly different topic now. The topic is to what extent is the task-based language teaching approach suitable for teaching speaking? Research question. So the hypothesis of Saranya is using task-based language teaching for developing speaking skills will lead to better learning outcomes than teaching them without TBLT. Let us take this context, because ultimately you should use your theory and argue. So this is Mr. Sharanya's topic. I'll use Mr. Sharanya's topic and discuss another method in experimental called as a four group design. So you should know as a researcher, if you are going to work on experimental design, which study will be suitable for you. Will a true experimental design be suitable for you, or will a quasi experimental design will be suitable for you, or will a Solomon four group design will be suitable for you? So I will discuss Solomon four group design with you. Okay, so let me move on to Solomon four group design. Let me show you what Solomon four group design is. Okay, now Sharanya has a very good context. She has designed some speaking modules based on TBLT. So she has an experimental group, just as everybody. She has conducted a pre-test and a post-test to the experimental group before applying TBLT. And she has done the same with another. She has one experimental group, group A and group B. She has another group which we call as group B, pre-test and post-test. So she has two control groups and two experimental groups. This is called as replication. She does not have one group. She has two groups. Okay, two groups. And she is using for two groups the existing approaches without any theoretical premises, and to other groups she has designed some modules using some of the premises of TBLT. And for both the groups she has pre-test, and for both the groups she has post-test. And so she has four groups, and this is what she observes the behaviors of these groups. Let us say for one group she has achieved the outcomes and another group she has not achieved the outcomes, then this study has once again should be repeated. They do this in medical research. Sometimes the drug, one drug may react effectively in one patient, but to another patient it may not react. Even in classroom, the same material, the same method, the same cognition, one day it may work even for the same person. The one day it may work for him, the another day the same professor, the same strategy, it may not work. Do you get the point? So you are having more groups and you are observing the patterns in all the groups. And if it works, and if your statistics and results shows that in all the groups TBLT has worked, then your design is purely an effective design. And this is called as a four group design. And this four group design came into origin because people were actually not happy, and in order to add more reliability there are such designs. So I have given you whatever I have discussed in some kind of questions here. Maybe you can ask yourself these questions at the end of the, maybe I can just share the entire materials maybe today from day one, because apparently this is my last class. I was requested to wind up because other professors are also, they also have something to complete. Because if I use more than, in fact, I have used more sessions, 4 sessions, maximum 5 sessions were allotted for me. So I had to really rush off today, and I'm just completing my sessions today because I just others have to take the sessions. So I'm just very quickly recapping. I have just put whatever I want to say here, like what you should do in step 1, what you should do in step 2, what you should do in step 3 and step 4. I'll share the slides for you to see, but let me take another 5 minutes to kind of recap what I have been dealing uh, right from day one. But before I do that, because I have come to the end of experimental research, I'll stop with this and I'll ask you if you have any questions related to experimental research. And then very quickly, I'll give you a cameo. I'll just put in a nutshell of what I have discussed and give you some take-home messages to reflect on how you can, as I said, it all boils down to you going and finding the truth, you deciding which is the appropriate approach, which is the appropriate methodology. So I'll be giving you such nuanced tips by the end of the talk, but I will stop with this for quantitative approaches. I know that quantitative approaches doesn't fit in the context of literature research, but if you have any questions or clarifications you need related to experimental design, you can ask me. But is my explanations in terms of experimental research clear to you?
Very clear, sir. Very exciting, sir, really, to know about these designs.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, yes, sir. Sir, I just have a kind of a clarification, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, when we have an experimental group and a control group,
yes.
So, should they? Is it okay if they come to know what actually we are doing with the experimental group? Because suppose we are taking students from the same institution, maybe
Yes.
from different branches,
Yes.
and then suppose they get to know what I'm doing with the other group.
Yes.
So, will that affect the research in any way, sir?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. There are, as I said, sir, that's a beautiful question. So whatever I have focused on in these talks is just the tip of the iceberg. But if you go and read the research protocols of experimental research, just perhaps Google it.
Yes.
That's why we use randomization. And in the research protocol, one of the protocols, I'm just giving you some samples. One of the protocols should be confidentiality of information. So what you are talking about will fall in the ambit of confidentiality of information. So the researchers should not know about the first thing is you will not reveal about their data and you will use it only for research purposes. Secondly, most importantly, as you said, you should not tell them about your experiment, because if you tell them about the experiment, that will unconsciously influence them. So you are absolutely right that this is called as, a blind intervention. So they shouldn't know what you're exactly doing to the other group. Okay, so that is why we do a kind of a homogeneity test. You know that the scores are more similar for both the groups, but let group A and B not know that you are doing different things for different groups.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Very clear, sir. Very clear.
Yes. So, and apparently, I know that most of you are in the initial stages, and in the later stages of your research, as your research really takes off and you gain more and more intensity, you can just get it clarified. You can just call me, because I do this consultancy. You can call me anytime, or you can, ask your guide. They'll be able to. And even if you, Google certain things, you may not have more clarity when you Google. You can, of course, you're most welcome to come back to any queries at any stage. So thank you. I'm sure that everybody have a very clear idea on how to conduct an experimental research. If there are no more questions, I'll do a brief recap and wind up. Are there any questions? Okay. By the end, you can ask me any generic questions also based on what I did from day one. So to just give you a quick cameo, we have discussed both qualitative and quantitative approaches. Qualitative approaches we started with action research. We did ethnographic research. Most importantly, both for ELT researchers and for researchers from the literature fraternity, you have to be very, very familiar with theoretical research. I raised a number of questions when I did theoretical research. These are reflective questions. So there are a lot of questions about theoretical research, and let me share those questions with you. I'm sure that every researcher, both ELT and literature, will place all your arguments, will develop your design only based on your theory. So be very familiar with how to approach a theory, how to use a theory, how to leverage a theory, and how to embrace the theory in order to lead to maximum potentiality. So you need to squeeze more out of a theory. So if you look at a theory, see if the theory fits into your research question, fits into your topic, and it gives you more light on how other researchers have approached that particular work. So I'm very, very particular about theoretical research, because I'm repeating it again and again, regardless of the research you do, whether it is a literature research or ELT research. Be familiar, because I see many researchers just choose a particular theory because they have preconceived notion that this is a very popular theory, that this is going to work, and they just fit in the theory into the context of the work. So don't take it and transplant it. Understand the theory, know your theory inside out. Just as a medical practitioner should know exactly before he does a kind of a neurosurgery, something goes wrong, everything goes wrong. So the cost is deadly. So if you have that kind of research responsibility, to know your theory, to know your principles, to know what you are doing, because many times people approach the research without a clear idea of what they are doing, and ultimately when things when they reach the deadline, they somehow convince. There are people who still get through, but the point I'm trying to make is, it's such a fascinating journey, believe me, because you will understand when you read more about the designs. You can also produce groundbreaking research, design some new methodologies, come out with some new theories, or even club different theories, and or to approach a author from a different lens where nobody has approached, to approach a pedagogy from a different perspective that nobody has approached, to design a new model in the educational landscape that nobody has thought about. So it's all about how you can think in novel ways, and your PhD is actually the starting point. And once you have a lot of grounding and passion in what you do, then you can actually start to show that in different aspects, and people will know you. So the point I'm trying to make is that each one of us can really carve a niche for ourselves, and the research output, especially in the Asian context, is very less compared to the European context. But if researchers can understand the methods, that will be a giant leap forward in taking your, research to a different level. So I think with this, I'm just winding up my entire sessions with you. I really enjoyed this journey of, maybe 6 or 7 sessions with you. I really enjoyed it. I believe that though whatever I have discussed was only at the surface level, I believe that I have done justice to the topics given to me, and I hope that you have also, gained the maximum out of it. So thank you all for patient listening. If you have anything to ask me, you can. And with this, we'll wind up. If there are no more questions, queries, or class, can we wind up with this? If there are no clarifications.
Sir, yes, sir. Really, you have given a clear clarification to the next level. What we, especially I have to do. So that I would like to thank you in person. So that's it.
Yes. So my pleasure, ma'am. Thank you
Yeah,
very much,
yes,
ma'am.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. I'm sure this experimental research design will definitely
Yes.
fit into the context of your research. So,
Yes.
whatever experimental design you choose, go revisit the design, look at some samples, and
Mm.
know it inside out, ma'am. Thank you very
Sure.
much for that comment.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
For every class, I think was so illuminating and enlightening, actually. First, I was actually wondering as to what is the control group and what is an experimental group.
Yes.
And then I think that has become very clear today.
Yeah.
But I think, as you suggested, a lot of reading is required.
Absolutely.
What I loved is you often insisted on grounding. You know, that is, I think that aspect of impact, I think that you have made very strong in me, I think, in others as well, sir.
True, sir. True, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your
Thank
kind
you.
words.
I think they have taken so much of trouble to prepare and deliver the sessions, and then thank you so much, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. Actually, it was a pleasure, sir. Usually, really enjoy these sessions. Not a trouble at all. It's really wonderful. But I really like what you said about grounding, sir. It's true that we all should gain a lot of grounding in what we do, especially theory. What theory we are applying, that's the first point of research, because your objectives, your research questions, your research findings, your interpretations, your conclusions, your scope for future study, you should all align with your theory. So it should have implications. Whatever it is, it should have a great alignment with the theoretical principles. So grounding, well said, sir. So thank you, Charles, sir, and thank you. So shall we wind up with this? So thank you, Lion. Thank you, Benazir. Thank you, Sharanya, and thank you, Jermia. Thank you all. Thank you. So I'll share my materials with you, and I'll also share. I have recorded each session. I'll share the links of the recordings also in course of time. So I'll wind up with this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, just
Thank
one
you,
little
sir.
doubt, sir.
Yes, yes.
Suppose the previous doctorate theses done now at our university, are they available in the library there, sir?
Okay, definitely, sir. They are available. They are available. It's in the library. You mean you, based on your study, experimental studies, you will definitely get a lot of thesis, sir. And actually, you can go and download that full thesis of whatever. For instance, Crescent University also, there are all this thesis is available online, sir. In South Ganga. In South Ganga. You need not even visit the library. You can just go to South Ganga and you can just download the entire thesis.
Fine, sir.
And similarly, if you want to really know the European context, if you want to download, you can go to ProQuest and download, the research that's happening in the European context.
Fine, sir. Fine.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other question? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Bye, sir.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, bye. Bye, everybody.